On a cold morning in February 2023, the people of Matsu woke up and the internet was gone. Not slow, not patchy, gone. Matsu is a cluster of Taiwanese islands sitting about 10 kilometers off the coast of mainland China. 14,000 people live there. And for them, the connection to the rest of the world ran through exactly 2 cables on the seabed, each one about as thick as a garden hose. On February 2nd, a Chinese fishing vessel severed the first one, roughly 30 kilometers offshore. 6 days later, a Chinese cargo ship cut the second. No missile, no explosion. No smoking crater on a satellite map, just 2 cables, in the dark, on the bottom of the sea. What happened next is the part nobody pictures. Residents couldn't pay an electricity bill online. They couldn't book a doctor. Shop owners couldn't tell guests whether there was Wi-Fi. At night, in the winter cold, people gathered outside the telecom company's offices on plastic stools, huddling around the one emergency hotspot in town just to send a message off the island. It took about 50 days to fix. Locals had a name for it. They called it the invisible blockade. Now, most people who heard this story filed it under Taiwan and China, a footnote in a regional standoff. That's the wrong file. Because what those 2 cables connected wasn't just an island to a mainland. They connected 14,000 people to the global economy. Every payment, every transfer, every link they had to the outside world. And when the cables went down, all of it stopped. Now, hold that image and scale it up, because the entire planet runs on the exact same thing, and almost nobody is watching the fight over who controls it. The myth. Here's the story we've been told about how the internet crosses oceans. Satellites, data raining down from orbit, wireless, weightless, everywhere, the cloud. It's almost entirely false. Roughly 99% of all international internet traffic moves through fiber optic cables lying on the ocean floor. Not the air, not orbit, the seabed. Every cross-border bank transfer, every currency trade, every message you send to someone on another continent, the overwhelming majority of it travels through cables most people will never see and never think about. And this isn't some fringe estimate. The chairman of America's own Federal Communications Commission puts the figure at 99% and ties those same cables to over $10 trillion in financial transactions every single day. A United States senator stood up and repeated the same numbers on the record. When the people who regulate this infrastructure describe it, that's the language they use. Satellites? They carry a sliver, by most estimates under 5%, possibly under 1%. A single modern cable can move data more than 1,000 times faster than a typical satellite. Starlink, for all the noise around it, is a backup, not the backbone. The real movement of money and information happens in darkness, under crushing pressure, on the floor of the sea. And the scale of it is hard to hold in your head. There are around 600 of these cable systems today, active or planned. Stretched end to end, they run well over 1 million kilometers. Enough to wrap around the Earth more than 30 times. So when we talk about the infrastructure that actually holds the global economy together, before the chips, before the banks, before any of it, we're talking about cables. The system and who owns it. The cables themselves are almost absurdly fragile looking for what they carry. Strands of glass thinner than a human hair, bundled inside protective sheathing, carrying data as pulses of laser light at nearly the speed of light. Every 100 kilometers or so, a sealed cylinder called a repeater boosts the signal and pushes it onward. These repeaters sit on the seabed, powered by current running through the cable from shore, and they're designed to keep working, untouched, for 25 years. When a cable reaches land, it surfaces at a cable landing station. And here's the strange part. These buildings look like nothing. A low warehouse behind a fence, no logo, no sign of what's inside. But this is the exact point where the ocean floor plugs into a country's financial system. The seabed on one side, and on the other, the banks, the exchanges, the data centers, the trading floors. Most people have walked past one and never known. The global economy passes through them. Now, here's what actually changed in the last decade. Not the technology, the ownership. For most of the internet's history, undersea cables were owned by consortiums of telecom companies. AT&T, British Telecom, Japan's NTT, who built the lines and rented out capacity. That model is being torn down from the inside. According to a Bloomberg analysis, 4 American companies, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon, now account for more than 70% of all used subsea cable capacity. A decade ago, that number was under 10%. Read that again. In roughly 10 years, a handful of US tech firms went from renting space on the world's data pipes to owning most of them. This is the quiet privatization of the internet's physical spine. The logic is cold and simple. When you move an ocean of data every day, renting bandwidth is expensive. Owning the pipe is cheaper, and owning the pipe gives you something money can't easily buy: control over the path the world's data takes. It gets narrower still. Almost every cable on Earth is physically built and laid by just 4 companies: America's Subcom, France's Alcatel Submarine Networks, Japan's NEC, and China's HMN Technologies, a firm that used to be called Huawei Marine. So sit with the shape of this. The arteries of the global economy are built by 4 manufacturers and increasingly owned by 4 American tech giants. That is not a free, open, borderless internet. That is a small number of private companies controlling the physical floor the world economy stands on. And in infrastructure, whoever owns the pipe holds the power. The silent war. There's a body inside the US government most people have never heard of. It's nicknamed Team Telecom. It holds no press conferences, it publishes no glossy reports, and over the last 5 years, it has quietly become one of the most consequential national security committees in Washington. Its members come from the FBI, the Department of Defense, and Homeland Security. Its job is to review any undersea cable that wants to land on American soil, and to scrutinize who owns it. The reasoning is blunt. A cable landing station isn't just infrastructure, it's a listening post. Whoever co-owns a cable touching US shores has a potential window into everything that flows through it. Since 2020, Team Telecom has blocked or forced the rerouting of multiple major cable projects with Chinese ties. One flagship line was originally designed to run straight from California to Hong Kong. Washington killed the Hong Kong leg and sent it to Taiwan and the Philippines instead. China is not standing still. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has been financing undersea cable construction across Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific, largely through HMN Technologies. The goal isn't just connectivity, it's a parallel network. Wiring up countries inside China's orbit, reducing their dependence on Western-owned cables, and routing more of the world's data through infrastructure Beijing has a hand in. And then there's the part that sounds like fiction but isn't. In 2025, China's own Ministry of Natural Resources confirmed it had tested a deep-sea device capable of cutting through armored undersea cables at depths of 3,500 meters. Far below where most cables were ever assumed to be safe. Think about what that means. For a century, the deep ocean protected these cables simply because nobody could reach them. That assumption is now expiring. This is the war that doesn't make the front page. Not missiles, not tariffs, cables. The vulnerability. Cables break all the time. Somewhere between 100 and 200 faults happen every year. Usually a dragged anchor, a fishing trawler, an undersea landslide, data reroutes around the damage. The system was built with redundancy precisely because breakage is normal. And here's something almost nobody knows. The entire planet depends on a fleet of roughly 60 ships to lay and repair these cables. 60. Many of them are converted tugs and ferries, some pushing 40 years old. A new cable ship costs over $100 million, and the repair business is barely profitable, so almost nobody builds them. The world spends billions laying new cables, and almost nothing on the aging ships that keep them alive. When a cable breaks in deep water, one of these vessels has to sail to the exact spot, hook the cable, drag it up from the seabed, splice it by hand, and lower it back. It can take weeks. The longest single repair on record took more than 2 years. But redundancy has a ceiling, and in 2024, the Red Sea showed everyone exactly where it is. In February that year, Houthi forces fired a missile at a cargo ship called the Ruby Mar. The crew abandoned it. The ship didn't sink right away. It drifted for days, wounded, with its anchor scraping along the seabed, and that dragging anchor severed 4 undersea cables at once. Experts called it exceptionally rare. Those cables carried traffic between Europe and Asia through the Suez Corridor. The Hong Kong Telecom HGC, which had to reroute the traffic, estimated the damage hit roughly a quarter of all data moving on that route. latency climbed. And here's the detail that should stop a macro thinker cold. That whole corridor funnels through the Bab al-Mandab Strait, a stretch of water only about 14 miles wide, through which an estimated 90% of all data between Europe and Asia passes. 90% of a continent's connection to another, threaded through a gap narrower than most cities. Not by design flaw, by geography. The map made the choke point. War found it. And the Red Sea isn't alone. Look at where the world's cables converge, and you find the same pattern every time. The Strait of Malacca, the Suez Approach, and the Taiwan Strait, where more than a dozen of the world's most important cable systems run through some of the most contested water on the planet. The cables didn't have to be destroyed to be weaponized. They just have to be cut in the right place, at the right time, in the right number. The Rubimar proved a dying ship's anchor can do it by accident. The obvious question is what a deliberate hand could do on purpose. If the global economy is a body, these cables are its nervous system. Cut enough nerves, and the body is still alive. It just stops moving. The danger is not that the internet can break. The danger is that a small number of states and companies now know exactly where to squeeze it. Close, loop back. The 14,000 people of Matsu got through their 50 days. They had backups, microwave links, a satellite trial, plastic stools outside a telecom office in the cold. The economy slowed. Life went on. Most of the global financial system has no plastic stool to fall back on. The $10 trillion that crosses these cables every day doesn't politely hop onto a satellite when a line goes down. It waits. And in markets, waiting is never free. Latency is loss. Settlement delays cascade. Systems built on the assumption of always-on connectivity do not fail gracefully when that assumption breaks. Here's what I keep coming back to. The internet is not in the sky. The global economy does not live in the cloud. It runs along strands of glass on the ocean floor. Laid by 4 companies, owned increasingly by 4 more, maintained by a tiny fleet of ships, and threaded through narrow straits now actively contested by the 2 largest economies on Earth. We argue endlessly about chips and AI and satellites and drones. We almost never talk about the thing underneath all of it, the cables that make the rest even possible. The contest over who builds, owns, and can cut the world's undersea cables is going to be one of the defining power struggles of the next 20 years. We're just not watching it yet. Follow the money. Follow the cables. That's not noise. That's a capital signal,